He stood on stage, trembling, palms sweating, heart racing. The man who once told him, "You'll never become anything," was now sitting in the front row. And then he picked up the mic, and the room went silent. Adnan Farouk was a man who lived an ordinary life. A fixed job, a fixed routine, and a fixed belief that he wasn't meant for greatness. His days began and ended in silence. He was intelligent, observant, and thoughtful, but he rarely spoke up. Somewhere deep inside him lived a fire, but it was buried under years of doubt and fear. That fear had a voice, a very specific one. It belonged to his old school teacher, Mr. Riaz, who had once said in front of the entire class, "You're not special, don't fool yourself, you'll never become anything." That sentence had sunk deep into Adnan's bones. And ever since that day, self-confidence was a luxury he never allowed himself. He worked hard, always. But when it came to raising his hand in meetings, pitching an idea, or even volunteering for a team task, he would quietly step back, let others shine, and convince himself he wasn't made for the spotlight. One of his colleagues, Maya Ali, often asked him gently, "Adnan, you always have the answers before anyone else. Why don't you speak?" He would smile faintly and say, "I don't think my words matter." That belief began to shift one seemingly regular afternoon. The company announced a major annual conference. Every employee was invited to give a presentation on how to improve team dynamics. The best presentation would lead the next big project as team leader. For most, it was an exciting opportunity. For Adnan, it was a reminder of every time he had been told he wasn't good enough. He had no intention of participating. But that evening, fate brought an old friend back into his life. Umair Jamil, now a renowned public speaker and motivational coach, who had once sat beside him in that very school classroom. They met after years at a coffee shop, and within minutes, Umair could see it. Adnan still carried that old wound like a badge on his chest. "You're still living in the shadow of that one sentence," Umair said gently, "But you forget, we're not kids anymore. You're allowed to change your story." "I don't know how," Adnan replied. "You start," Umair smiled, "by trusting the voice inside you more than the one that broke you." From that day on, Umair began training Adnan for the presentation. Every evening after work, they'd meet. At first, Adnan stumbled. He could barely read a paragraph aloud without trembling. But Umair didn't give up, and slowly Adnan began to hear his own voice, not just out loud, but within. Maya, too, started sending him motivational notes, little messages like, "You're more capable than your fear, or "Speak once, and the world will listen twice." Bit by bit, belief began to take root. Then came the day of the presentation. The auditorium was full. Company directors, team leaders, colleagues, and among the special guests, one man sat quietly with arms folded. Mr. Riaz, the very teacher who once crushed a boy's spirit. Adnan's name was called. As he walked toward the stage, his knees felt like they might give in. He could hear his heartbeat louder than the applause. Standing at the podium, he saw Mr. Riaz's face unchanged, unreadable. He gripped the microphone, closed his eyes for a second, took a deep breath, and said, "When I was 13 years old, someone told me I would never become anything, that I didn't have a voice, that I wasn't enough. For years I believed them, but I forgot one thing. It's not what people say about you that defines your life. It's what you whisper to yourself when the room is quiet." The audience went silent, and Adnan continued. He didn't just speak. He poured his truth. His ideas weren't just smart. They were real, raw, and filled with purpose. When he finished, there was no pause before the standing ovation began. Tears welled in Maya's eyes. Even Umair, in the back row, smiled with pride. Later that evening, Mr. Riaz approached him. His tone was different now. softer, almost regretful. You proved me wrong, he said, and I'm glad you did. You've become something greater than I ever expected. Not just a speaker, but a man who turned silence into strength. Adnan looked at him and replied, "Thank you for doubting me. That doubt became my drive." He was soon promoted to lead the biggest project the company had ever handled. Invitations for public speaking rolled in. He began coaching others, people just like him, who were silently suffering in the shadow of fear. Years passed. Adnan never forgot where he started. He'd often visit schools, sharing his story with students who needed to hear it most. He'd stand in front of them, confident, composed, and say, "Self-confidence is not about being perfect, it's about being present. Even if your voice shakes, let it be heard, because the world needs your truth, not your silence." He learned that belief isn't gifted. It's built, and he had built his brick by brick against every voice that tried to silence him. And it all started the day he chose to believe in himself. The moral of this story is that self-confidence isn't something you're born with. It's something you choose every single day, even when you're scared. The world will only believe in you after you've believed in yourself. So speak, rise, show up, even when your hands tremble. Because confidence is not the absence of fear, it's the courage to keep going despite it.